Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Am I audible, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu, very well. Thank you. Okay. Hare Krishna devotees, welcome again to Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya on a Saturday morning. We have the privilege of having His Grace Haridev Krishna Prabhu, and he would be actually walking us through Canto 4, Chapter 28, verses 62 and 63. Over to you, Prabhu. Dandavats.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and thank the temple management for giving an opportunity to read, hear from elevated speakers and try to observe myself and share whatever I could assimilate. We'll start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Ruttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So I'll share the screen and this is 4th canto, 28th chapter, 62nd shloka. Chapters entitled Puranjana becomes a woman in this next line. We'll recite the shloka. Aham bhavan chanyastvam tvamevaham vichakshva boho nanau pashyanti kavayas chidram jatu managapihi api. Aham bhavan chanyastvam tvamevaham vichakshva boho nanau pashyanti kavayas chidram jatu managapi. Aham bhavan chanyastvam tvamevaham vichakshva boho nanau pashyanti kavayas chidram jatu managapi. Word to word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Aham, I, Bhavan, you, Na, not. Cha, also. Anyaha, different. Tvam, you. Tvam, you. Eva, certainly. Aham, as I am. Vichakshvaha, just observe. Bho, my dear friend. Na, not. Now, of us. Pashyanti, do deserve. Kavayaha, learned scholars. Chidram, faulty differentiation. Jatu, at any time. Manak, in a small degree. Api, even. My dear friend, I, the super soul, and you, the individual soul, are not different in quality, for we are both spiritual. In fact, my dear friend, you are qualitatively non-different from me in your constitutional position. Just try to consider this subject. Those who are actually learned scholars, are advanced scholars who are in knowledge, do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. Purport. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one. There is no factual difference between the two. The Mayavadi philosophers are again and again defeated by the illusory energy because they think that there is no separation between the super soul and the individual soul, or that there is no super soul. They are misled in thinking that everything is the super soul. However, those who are Kavayaha, learned scholars, actually know the facts. They do not commit such mistakes. They know that God and the individual soul are one in quality, but that the individual soul falls under the clutches of Maya, whereas the super soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, is the controller of Maya. Maya is the creation of the Supreme Lord, Maya Shrishta. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is the controller of Maya. Although one in quality with the Supreme Lord, the individual soul is under the control of Maya. Mayavadi philosophers cannot distinguish between the controller and the controlled. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya sadvaitam savadutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya devam Shri Radha Krishna padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurotishe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I again seek the blessings of all the Vaishnavas so that I may speak in Parampara and try to repeat whatever I've heard from elevated devotees. So the background to this chapter or this shloka we all know is Narada Muni is very mercifully trying to uplift Prachini Barhi from the process of Karma Kanda into Bhakti. And he starts with the story of King Puranjana, an allegorical story, and how Puranjana finally being attached to his wife, thinking about his wife, he quits the body and becomes a woman in the next life. As spoken in the Bhagavad Gita, Yam Yam Mapi Smaran Bhavam, Tyajat Ante Kalevaram, Tam Tam Evaiti Kaunte, Sada Tad Bhava Bhavitaha. Whatever one remembers at the time of death, uh, he will surely attain such a state. So the next life is a very complicated thing. Many times we have heard two things determine our next life: our desires and the karma that we do. And the combination of both of them will give us our next life, next body. Suppose somebody is very attached to his family members, but if his activities are not uh, befitting him to be awarded a human body in the next life, then he may become a dog or any other animal based on the quality of desires and the karma that he has cultivated. If somebody is a very hard-working materialist, probably, but he doesn't have enough punya to become a human being, then he may become a hard-working species, maybe like ant or somebody in the same house, like that. Somebody is always fighting and greedy and lusty, then he may also become a dog in the same house, like that. Or somebody who wants to protect the house, like we see in the Kailash story. Narada Muni tells Kailash, please come, I'm ready to take you to Vaikuntha. But he was very attached to his house. Who will protect? My children are not very responsible. They may not protect the property, the paddy field, etc. Then next life, he ended up becoming a dog that way. So our desires and the karma that we have, both put together, actually gives us a next body. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada wanted all of his followers to go back to Godhead, and he has given a nice process by which actually if we follow the process like Jai Padaka Maharaj sings also in the Yadi Prabhupada Na Hoy To Bhajan, there is no opportunity for us not to remember Krishna, starting from morning program. Then so many services are given. Only we need to get absorbed in the process that Srila Prabhupada has mercifully given us. That there are so many opportunities for services, for engaging our propensities in Krishna's service, and visiting so many holy places, and understanding the pastimes that occurred in this place. So many things. So anyway, Puranjana became a woman in the next life, and he was married. The woman was married to Malayadvaja, and Prabhupada is writing in the purport that Malayadvaja, who became spiritually very enlightened, he is compared to the spiritual master, the spiritually advanced person, and the wife is compared to the disciple. So Malayadvaja, due to he quits his body, and then Puranjana, who became a woman in the next life, is crying for the death of her husband. So there Prabhupada is also writing, this should be the attachment between the spiritual master and his disciple. When the spiritual master leaves, the disciple must cry in separation, like that. So that is why we sing Jay Anilo Premadana on all the disappearance day, because Narottam Das Thakur had composed that song in deep separation. So we try to adopt that mood of feeling the loss of spiritual master or great Vaishnava on the day of his disappearance. And throughout, one should constantly remember Dhyayam Stuvam Stasya Yashastri Sandhyam. The scriptures say 3 times a day one should meditate on the spiritual master, like that. So at that time, when the lady is crying for separation, out of separation from her husband. A Brahmana comes and he starts speaking. The Brahmana is actually the Paramatma. So he says, actually, both of us are dear friends. You have come to me and sought help in the past. Don't you remember me? Like that. So the Paramatma is reminding the living entity of their eternal friendship and connection, like that. So that Paramatma's manifestation or expansion is the Guru, because we are so much disconnected from Paramatma. Paramatma expands mercifully as a Guru and then guides us back. So both the Siksha and Diksha Guru, Chaitanya Charitamrita, the first chapter speaks in detail how both Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru, they're actually representations of the Paramatma. That way. So the Brahmana is speaking, and now the Supreme Lord, actually in the form of Brahmana, is speaking the shloka to the woman. Both the me and you both are actually individual souls, and we are not different in quality. We are actually Sachidananda, so there is no need of any lamentation that way. So those who are advanced scholars who are in knowledge do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. So this is a shloka where there is a lot of scope for Mayavadi kind of interpretation. Sometimes some scholars also argue, although there is no word qualitatively, etc., why Prabhupada is adding such words. There is no difference, like that they say. But two shlokas from here, we will understand that, in fact, I'll just go to that shloka and we'll understand how what Prabhupada is saying is the word qualitatively can be justified in this shloka. Here it is saying, Evam sa manaso hamso hamsena pratiboditaha swastas tad vyabicharena nashtam apa punasmritim. So in this way, both swans are there within the heart. Like this, he's saying. The Paramatma speaking to the Brahmana speaking. And then he's adding, but there is a difference between both the swans. When one swan is pratiboditaha, being instructed by the other swan. That means when we perfectly follow the orders of the Paramatma, then we become situated in our actual constitutional position. That means although there are two swans, one is getting instructed and another is instructing the person. So like that. So many a times we have to take the whole context and not just with one shloka land up to a conclusion. So just 2-3 verses, 64th verse, you'll see that although it externally seems here that chidram jatu managapi, not even a slightest of difference is there between us. Like that one may conclude. But Prabhupada is adding this word qualitatively. Many people, and they do not find any, those who are actually advanced scholars who are in knowledge do not find any qualitative difference between you and me. So one of the mantras that we glorify Prabhupada as a pranam mantra is Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. He defeated both Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi, Paschatya Deshatarine. So Prabhupada was very deadly against Mayavad philosophy. So what is Mayavad? What is Brahmavad? So the hardcore materialist is only interested in sense gratification. So he's attached to Maya and detached from Krishna. That is a hardcore materialist. And a Sahajiya means he's attached to Krishna, but he is also attached to material enjoyment or sense gratification. So they bring down the actual uh, path of bhakti. So because they are attached to sense gratification, in the name of religion, sometimes we see some of them doing grossly wrong things, like they performing some dance with some ladies and saying, this is Rasa Leela, we are enacting that way. So the Sahajiya, there is attachment both to Krishna and to Maya. And the Mayavadi, he's detached from both. He's detached from Maya, detached from Krishna, like that. And what is the conception of Mayavadis? How is it different from Brahmavadi? The four Kumaras were Brahmavadis. Shukadev Goswami was initially, both of them were Brahmavadis. Brahmavadi means uh, some of them may be aware of the personal form of the Lord also, but their heart is more attached to the impersonal aspect. Now, why this could happen? Why? We have seen Atma Ramascha Munayo, that shloka, where even the most self-satisfied person can actually get attracted to the transcendental qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. So why? Although they know that Lord has a personal feature, some of them may be aware that he has a personal feature, but still they may feel to get attached to the impersonal form. That is also a possibility of Brahmavadis. And one reason could be they have not sufficiently heard about the wonderful qualities of Krishna. In this world, we see any relationship is either tinged with selfishness, or even if it is selfless, uh, the way I would want to relate to a person may not be the same way he would want me to relate to him. Like I may have a particular rasa in my relationship, but the other person may have a different rasa in expectation in their relationship. So even if both want to please each other, sometimes the way I feel I can please the other person may not be exactly the way they want us to please them. So in this way, most of the relationships, even if it is so-called selfless, many a times may end up in arguments. So sometimes Prabhupada also said, within ISKCON, sometimes we may see some external debates going on, two of them having different opinions. So that is bound to occur, because even in spiritual world, the gopis have different ways of how to please Krishna. And there is even sometimes argument. We should not consider the argument when it comes for service of Krishna as mundane, because both the pure devotees are actually debating on what would be the best way to serve Krishna. And each of them, because of their own flavors, their own moods, they may also see this is better, the other one is better. But that is not out of selfishness for name, fame, glory. Uh, we should never look at it like that and take any sides. We should just see that both of them are transcendentally uh, uh, debating on what would best please Krishna as per their own uh, 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 mood, their own flavors, etc. Like that. So that is one reason. The Brahmavadis, they see sometimes that in this world, even if relationship is selfless, sometimes it may end up into arguments, and they feel better I don't want any such relationship only. Let me just focus on being alone, aloof, like that. So Prabhupada also gives that example. Sometimes a husband and wife, they may have a bitter quarrel, and then both of them decide we shall not talk to each other, and they lock up in different rooms. Better let me be alone, at least I will be peaceful, like that. But after 1 day, 2 days, they will think, what is this life, just alone in the room? I need some relationship. Then they again go, they try to understand each other better, and eventually life goes on. Again they happily relate with each other, like that. So because Brahmavadis, sometimes they have this strong conception that any relationship means problem, so they try to focus on impersonal meditation, and that is because they have not understood sufficiently about the transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the powers of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is so potent that he can expand in innumerable ways to satisfy each living entity as per, and reciprocate with them according to their own mood. And so we many times that is one reason why Brahmavadis may not be aware, wanting to get attracted because they have not sufficiently heard, and their material conception of relationship they try to still carry on. And even a good lesson for us also. Sometimes in devotees association, we may sometimes not like the way a person deals, etc. So we should tell ourselves that in the spiritual world, uh, it's all about relationship with Vaishnavas also. So we don't want to end up in Brahman kind of understanding, thinking I'll be aloof that way. So all of them are involved in serving Krishna. Each of their flavors may be different, but we should appreciate the commonality. Everyone wants to serve Krishna and try to get along happily in that way. So this is one reason. Another reason, Brahmavadis may not have sufficient knowledge about other features like Paramatma and Bhagavan feature, like that. So once they get, they may eventually be transported to the Bhagavan aspiration also. So Brahmavadis, they are not dangerous, but Mayavadis, they are dangerous. Why? Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hoila Sarvanash, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Why Mayavadis are dangerous? Because the Mayavad philosophy is not actually a Vedic conception. It is a altered form of Vedic. It is not the actual Vedic conception, because the Vedas say Lord has three features: Vadanti Tat Tadvidas, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Even the Ishopanishad says, Hiranmayena Patrena, Satyasya Pihitam Mukam, Tatvam Pushan Apavarno, Satya Dharmaya Drishyate, where the living entity is telling, oh Lord, I want to have your beautiful darshan, but your glaring effulgence is so illuminating that I'm unable to see your actual beauty. So that means we do understand there is a Brahman effulgence of the Lord, which itself is so illuminating. Sometimes when we don't hear from acharyas, we may just look at that light and conclude, yes, this is what the Supreme Lord is. And the devotee is praying, please remove this so that I can look at your beautiful darshan, like that. So Vedas agree that these are three levels, but Mayavadis, their whole conception is ultimately there is only Brahman. There is no Bhagavan, etc. There is only Brahman, they say. And then how do we explain the variegatedness here? They say that Supreme Brahman, when it takes when it is influenced by different modes, we take this variety. Actually, there is no variety, they say. There is only one. But when we when we are under different modes, we get this variety. They say that Brahman under Tamoguna becomes dead matter. The Brahman under Rajoguna becomes all the conditioned souls. And the Brahman under Sattva-guna becomes incarnation of God, or even the sannyasis. The sannyasi is supposed to be in Sattva-guna. So they say, because sannyasi is in Sattva-guna, he is as good as an avatar. So they address each other, sannyasis, as Narayan. And then they say that finally, when he gives up this body and attains his mukti, then this avatar becomes Brahman, like that. So they say that even the Supreme Lord, when in Sattva Guna, he becomes an avatar. But that is thoroughly against the conception of who God is. God means one who at any time is fully independent and fully in control of everything. How can God be under Sattva Guna, under Rajo Guna, under Tamo Guna? The word Achyuta is used for the Supreme Lord, which means one who never falls down. How can the Supreme Lord fall down? The sparks may get extinguished, but the fire cannot get extinguished because it's so massive. That is Supreme Lord, Vibhu. We are Anu, like that. And even in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada repeatedly hammers this in many shlokas. So in the second chapter, 12th shloka, Natve vaham jatu nasham, natvam neme janadipa, nachaiva nabhavishyamaha. So there, Prabhupada is arguing against the Mayavadis. Prabhupada is saying, Mayavadis say that finally we become Brahman. But then why Krishna is saying, there will never be a time when you are not there, and there will never be a time in future when you shall not cease to exist. That means now also you have an identity. In future also, at any point of time, you will have an identity of your own. It is not that all of us become one like that. So in the 12th, in the second chapter, 12th shloka, we can read the purport that Prabhupada is hammering against this Mayavadi. Why Krishna is telling, in future also you will continue to exist. That means you're not going to get changed as one unit like Brahman. You will continue to have your own identity like that. And even in this verse, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So Krishna is saying, you are my parts and parcels, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke, and you are Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That means eternally you are going to remain as living entities like that. There also Prabhupada says, again, Mayavad is defeated there. And even in the 7th chapter, Krishna is telling that what is the difference between matter and Atma, spirit, and the Supreme Lord. So first Krishna is saying, Bhumir apo nalo vayu kammano buddhi revacha ahankaram itiyamme binna prakritir ashtada. Krishna is saying these Bhumi, Apo, Nalo, Vayu, earth, water, fire, air, ether, my mind, intelligence, false ego, they are my Prakriti, Binna Prakriti Rashtada, they are my inferior energy, they are my separated energy, Prakriti, separated nature. Krishna is also saying, Apareyam itasvanya, Prakritim vidhi me param. There is another type of my Prakriti also, my energy, which is superior. And who are they? Jiva Bhuta Mahabaho Dharayate Jagat, like that. So Krishna is saying the others are the living entities who are trying to control this world and try to maneuver this world and try to get rid of sufferings and get only happiness. They're trying to constantly struggle in this world like that way. So they are superior. Now, does it mean they are as good as Krishna? No, Krishna is saying these are two types of Prakriti. And who am I? Maya Dyakshena Prakriti. So both these Prakritis work under my Adhyakshata. That means under my control. So there is matter, there is spirit, and beyond both, there is controller of both, which is Krishna. Maya Dyakshena Prakriti. Suyate Sacharacharam. I am the connecting one who's in charge of everything and making sure everything is in order like that. So this way, repeatedly we see that yes, qualitatively we are one, but quantitatively there is a earth to sky difference between the Lord and the living entity. And some people may say, yes, all what Krishna is saying is in the conditioned state, but when one becomes a Jivan Mukta, when we become a liberated person, then actually we become as good as Krishna. Like that, some people argue. Even for that, Prabhupada has beautifully written in the 9th chapter Bhagavad Gita, in that Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Pavitram Midamuttamam, Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam, Susukam Kartum Avyayam. So in that word, shloka, Prabhupada has beautifully written in the purport how devotional service is the topmost, it is pure, pavitram, uttamam, it is topmost and free from all ignorance. And then the last, Prabhupada says, it is experiential, pratyakshaavagamam dharmyam, susukam, it's happily performed, susukam kartum avyayam. So Prabhupada is elaborating the word avyayam. Avyayam means what? That this dharma does not it is inexhaustible. That means Jivera Swarupoi, Krishnera Nityadas. This is the dharma of the living entity. How long is this dharma? Is it only till I attain liberation? After that, will Jiva and Krishna become one? The 9th chapter Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, you will do happily, susukam kartum, but how long? Avyayam. Avyayam means inexhaustible. Even after you attain liberation, we will continue to perform bhakti only. It is not that now we become one with Supreme Lord. So even that shloka, Prabhupada is elaborating. Don't think after we attain moksha, we become one with Supreme Lord. We are always servants, and Ekala he Ishvara Arasabha Britya. There is one Supreme Lord, all others are his eternal servitors, may it be demigods or the living entity. Okay. So these are few things I wanted to share on the first shloka. In the second shloka, it's a continuation. Yata Purusha Atmanam Ekam Adarsha Chakshushoh Dvidabhutam Aveksheta Tataivantaram Avayoho. Yatha Purusha Atmanam Ekam Adarsha Chakshushoh Dvidabhutam Aveksheta Tataivantaram Avayoho. Yatha Purusha Atmanam Ekam Adarsha Chakshushoh Dvidabhutam Aveksheta Tataivantaram Avayoho. Yata, as Purusha, living entity, Atmanam, his body, Ekam, one, Adarsha, in a mirror, Chakshusho, by the eyes, Dvida Abhutam, existing as two, Avekshete, sees, Tata, similarly, Eva, certainly, Antaram, difference, Avayoho, between ourselves. So again, this sloka, if we take it independently, one may conclude Mayavad is what one is talking about. But the next sloka will give us the connection. There is difference also. As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies. So, in our material condition, in which the living entity is affected and in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. So here, the translation says, in a conditioned state, there is difference between God and living entity. So one may argue then, maybe in the liberated state, there is no difference. No, there is difference. We already saw all the examples, and next sloka also we'll see. And let us see Prabhupada also, what Prabhupada is writing. Prabhupada is actually saying how Mayavadis get a wrong understanding, continuing from the previous purport. Being affected by the conditioning of matter, Mayavadi philosophers cannot see difference between Supreme Lord and living entity. When the sun is reflected in a pot of water, the sun knows there is no difference between himself and the reflected sun in water. Those in ignorance, however, perceive that there are many small suns reflected in each and every pot. As far as the brilliance is concerned, there is brilliance both in the original sun and in reflections. But the reflections are small, whereas the original sun is very large. Vaishnava philosophers conclude that the living entity is simply a small sample of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Qualitatively, God and the living entities are one, but quantitatively, the living entities are small fragments of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is full, powerful, and opulent. In the previous verse, the Lord says, "My dear friend, you and I are not different." This non-difference refers to qualitative oneness. For it was not necessary for the Paramatma, Supreme Personality, to remind the conditioned soul that he is not one in quantity. Because it is so obvious, quantity we can never be one. The self-realized soul never thinks he and the Supreme Lord are one in every respect. Although he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in quality, the living entity is prone to forget his spiritual identity, whereas the Supreme Personality never forgets. This we can see in again Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is saying, "I spoke this Bhagavad Gita to sun god long ago. And then Arjuna is asking, both of us are almost same age. How am I to understand that you had spoken this millions of years ago? And Krishna is saying, both of you and me, we have taken many different uh, in births. For Krishna, it is not birth, it is an incarnation. But the difference is, I remember everything, you forget, because my body never changes. I'm always in Sachidananda Vigraha form. But we have different material gross bodies. The living entity takes different gross bodies. So, as the gross body goes away, the relationship of the gross body is all forgotten, and only the desires that he has are carried forward like that. So, the Supreme Personality never forgets. This is the difference between Lipta and Alipta. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally Alipta, uncontaminated by the external energy. The conditioned soul, however, being in contact with material nature, forgets his real identity. And therefore, when he sees himself in conditioned state, he identifies himself with a body. For the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, there is no difference between the body and soul. He is completely soul. He has no material body. Although the super soul Paramatma and the individual soul are both within the body, the super soul is devoid of designation, whereas the conditioned soul is designated to this particular type of body. The super soul is called Antaryami and he is extensive. Is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Oh, kind of Bharata. You should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. The super soul is present in everyone's body, whereas the individual soul is conditioned in one particular type of body. The individual soul cannot understand what is taking place in another's body, but super soul knows what is happening in all the bodies. In other words, super soul is present always in his full spiritual position, whereas the individual soul is prone to even forget himself. And the individual soul is not also present everywhere. Generally, in his conditioned state, individual soul cannot understand his relationship with super soul. But when he is freed from the conditional existence, he can see the real difference between super soul and himself. When the super soul tells the conditioned soul, you and I are one and the same, it is to remind the conditioned soul of his spiritual identity as being qualitatively one. In the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Yatol Mukad Vispulingad Dhumad Vapi Swasambhavat Apyatma Atmena Atmenabhi Mathad Yatagni Pratag Ulmukhat. Fire has different features. There is flame, spark, and smoke. Although these are one in quality, still there is a difference between the fire, flame, spark, and smoke. The living entity becomes conditioned, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is different because he does not become conditioned at any point. In the Vedas, it is said, Atma Tata Pritag Drishta Bhagavan Brahma Samnita. Atma is the individual soul and as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of everything. Although both are spirit, there is always a difference. In the Smriti, it is said, Yatagnek Shudra Vispulinga Linga Vyucharanti. Just as sparks manifest in a large fire, similarly, small individual souls are present in the big spiritual flame. And in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna also says, Matstani sarvabhutani na chaham teshva avasthita. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Although all living entities are resting in him, as small fiery sparks rest on a large flame, both are differently situated. Similarly, in the Vishnu Puran, it is said, Eka Desha Stitasyaagner Jyotsna Vistarini Yatha Parasya Brahmana Shaktis Tatedam Akilam Jagat. Fire is situated in one place, but it distributes heat and light. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is distributing his energies in different ways. The living entity is but one of these energies, marginal energy. The energy and energetic are one in one sense, but they are differently situated as energy and energetic. Similarly, the Satchidananda form confirmed in Brahma Samhita is different from that of the living entity in both conditioned and liberated state. Only atheists consider the living entity and personality of Godhead equal in all respects. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile, Haila Sarvanash. If one follows the instructions of Mayavad philosophers and believes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual soul are one, his understanding of real philosophy is forever doomed. So, here many wonderful points. Prabhupada is quoting from different scriptures. One, Prabhupada is saying that yes, there is only one sun which is being reflected in all pots, but there is a difference also. That sun is full in energy, and the pots it is the same sun's reflection, but it cannot give as much heat as the actual sun gives. Like that. Same way, Vaishnavas, we understand there is qualitative oneness, but quantitative difference. And then Prabhupada is saying one other difference where we tend to forget, but Lord never forgets that way. And then about cognizance, Prabhupada is saying, we are aware of only our body. Sometimes even our body, we are not fully in control and aware. But Paramatma is aware of all the living entities of all the body. And for us, there is a difference between the spirit and the body. That's why when the body dies, we are taken to a different place. But for Lord, there is no such designation different from his spirit soul. His spirit soul is itself his entire thing. He is a Satchidananda Vigraha that Prabhupada is mentioning here. And then many examples on the fire. The actual fire is the Supreme Lord, and based on the amount of in Bhagavad Gita also we see somebody who's in ignorance is like example given of wood, and then wood in fire. Wood, from wood also we can get fire. Then I'm not able to recollect that shloka where it says that based on our consciousness, we can be considered as different manifestations of the actual fire. Here also similar thing is said, spark and smoke. Although they're all coming from fire, they're still different from the actual fire. And although Supreme Lord is situated in one place, his energies are distributed at all places, just like heat and light is distributed at all places, although sun is situated at one place. And one such energy is the living entity also, like that. So these are all spoken here. One other last point, which Mayavadis usually say, they say that Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. They say that this material world is full of illusion. So they say just like mirage has no existence, although it seems there is water. So in this world there's nothing which is true, they say. But then the Vaishnavas, they say it is not that it is no, it does not exist at all. It's only a reflection. But the fact that there is reflection here means the original must exist somewhere else. We cannot say that this does not exist. If we find a mirage, that means there must be water somewhere else. If we think of a rope wrongly to be a snake and get feared, thinking, oh, it's a snake, but actually it is a rope, that means somewhere the snake must have been there. Otherwise, how I would have I'll get the conception of the snake also. Same way, in this world, we are searching for happiness, and many a times we are frustrated. That means when we are frustrated here, but the search for happiness comes because we have experienced it elsewhere, and that elsewhere is the spiritual world. And because everything is ultimately an emanation of the Supreme Lord, Prabhupada gave that example. Nothing in this world can be said useless or permanent illusion. Why? Because everything is coming from Lord. If we use it in the Lord's service, it can be made spiritual. A microphone used to sing bhajans, it becomes spiritual. And if it is used to sing mundane movie songs, it becomes material, like that. And that is the argument we also give. If everything in this world is illusion, then the Mayavadis also resort to worshipping different forms of Lord, which they feel are illusion. How can somebody who is worshipping illusion come out of illusion by that worship? We are trying to come out of illusion, and for coming out, can we take shelter of illusion and come out of illusion? That is not possible. Just like a person who is drowning, he cannot take shelter of another drowning man and try to come out and get himself saved. So these are certain arguments which we can constantly remember and explain, because more dangerous than materialism is this type of spiritual thoughts where everyone feels we are one with the Supreme Lord. Very difficult for such people to take to the spiritual path. So whatever Prabhupada has repeatedly spoken, we can remind ourselves, and we can also guide others if they come for such doubts. Hare Krishna. I think I will stop here. Please forgive me if there are any mistakes from my end. I tried my best to present what I heard and understood. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful lecture, and very clearly, emphasizing about the two verses talking about the relationship as well as the distinction between the soul and super soul, which you very clearly brought out. You brought about the qualitative, the oneness between the soul and super soul is misunderstood as oneness by itself. And very nicely you brought about one is the instructor, other is the one to follow, that is the super soul and the soul, and how you very nicely distinguish between the materialists and the Sahajayas, and then Mayavadi and the Brahmavadi. You try to, very nicely bring about what is their different identity in terms of the thought and philosophy which they follow. And you brought about this beautiful thing of, the super soul being the Antaryami, quoting Bhagavad Gita and various the shlokas, and never gets contaminated by the material nature. And the remembrance is there always, and that's why we don't. And the analogies of sun and the reflection of sun and pots, as well as energy, how it gets distributed, the light and heat, how it gets spread across, has been very nicely brought about. And towards the end, you very nicely brought this point about how the Brahma Satya Jagat Nitya as an illusion is outrightly, rejected by saying that the reflection denotes the existence of originality, which is a very important point. And all the items could be engaged in the service of the Lord. So if you can't depend on illusion, period of illusion, that really comes out. I'll just maybe just open up everybody. Let me just open up for their comments and questions. And over to you, devotees. You can share your comments and questions. Thank you, Prabhu, for your association. Wonderful class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the wonderful class. After a very, very long time, we are seeing you. And very nice understanding of the soul, super soul. Prabhu, you said this Brahmavadis, they say Jagat Mithya. And we call it as temporary world, no, Prabhu?
Correct. So their understanding is Mithya means this is just illusion, like that. So they feel nothing in this world can ever be our understanding is, because everything comes from God, everything is spiritual. To the degree it is used in the service of God. But they say everything here is illusion. And they say that finally there is no variety. Just like the difference is, they say here we have relationship. Here there is variegatedness. But this is all illusion. Finally, there is only oneness, like that. So that is their main, even the Supreme Lord, their ultimate understanding is Supreme Lord doesn't have a form. We are all just integrated, one with Supreme Lord as Brahman. That is the ultimate understanding, they say. And why then we are experiencing all these dualities and variegatedness here? Because this is illusion. Ultimately, there is no such thing. That is their difference. But we say that when you see a mirage, yes, in this world, relationships are faulty. Relationships are filled with selfishness. So therefore, it is not giving us happiness. Just like when we jump in the mirage and try to drink water, instead of getting water, we'll only get hot sand, which will frustrate the living entity. But that doesn't mean there is no water anywhere. There can be relationships which are fully selfless, which are fully satisfying, which is what the pure devotees experience in loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, like that. So that is the main difference. I hope I was able to answer Mataji.
Yes, yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranams.
Hare
Thanks
Krishna.
for the nice class, Prabhu.
Thank
Prabhu,
you.
you said Mayavadis and Brahmavadis, they both believe in Brahman. So what is the difference, Prabhu?
Brahmavadis, they may have understanding that Lord also has a personal form. But they feel I'm more comfortable in this way. Just like when we have a fight between the husband and wife, some others may say, why don't you get along? But 2-3 days, the fight, if it has gone too high, wife will say, I'll go to my mother's place. But after some time, they come back, like that. So Brahmavadis, they feel this world so frustrating, it is better I remain aloof, like that. Even though they may know the personal form, or sometimes they may not know the personal form, but they feel that ultimately, so the difference is, these Mayavadis, they say even when Lord descends in the incarnation form, it is actually covered by Maya. That is why the word Mayavadis. When Lord comes, he is just the supreme Brahman who has taken the form of mode of goodness, like that they say. So Krishna, that supreme Brahman has just fallen under Sattva Guna, and he has become this one. So they deride the personality at all. Most of the Brahmavadis, because the Upanishads, many times the Vedas and Upanishads, they don't speak much about the personal form of Lord. Very rarely here and there you will see. So because the Brahmavadis keep reading always Brahman, Brahman, they feel that the absolute is just light spread all over. They have not gone into the mood of offending the personality of Godhead. That when incarnations come, it is actually covered by Maya. Such things they don't. That way. Like the 4 Kumaras, they didn't have enough knowledge about the Supreme Personality of Godhead's wonderful qualities, etc. So they were happy in the meditating on the impersonal Brahman effulgence.
Yes, Prabhu, I understood, Prabhu. And you also said Mayavadis are detached from both Krishna and Maya. So what is that, Prabhu?
The meaning is Mayavadi sannyasis also, they are completely no to sense gratification. They're detached from Maya. That means they don't get into sense gratification. But that's a very positive thing, giving up sense gratification. But because there is no attachment to Krishna also, their detachment is of no purpose. The Sahajiyas, they're attached to Krishna. There is a positive there. And the negative is they're still not detached from sense gratification. And the Bhakta, he is attached to Krishna and he should be detached from Maya, like that. So that is
And who are these impersonalists, Prabhu?
Impersonalists are actually Brahmavadis. Impersonalists are Brahmavadis, and Mayavadis are those who actually offend the personality of Godhead. And they say that they also say Brahman is the ultimate destination. But along with that, they say this Krishna, Rama, they are all actually just mode of goodness forms, like that they say. They are not transcendental, like that. So they say that's why so many philosophies come up. No? They say that why did Krishna die with being pierced by hunter? Because of Gandhari's curse. Why did Yadava Kula vanish? Because Gandhari cursed. That means they think that Krishna is subjected to curse. Krishna is subject to karmic reactions. But in Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, Krishna is saying, Name karmani limpanti. I am not subject to karma, like that. So they think Krishna's activities are material, and therefore he is also subject to good actions and reactions.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. The Mayavadis are called as Mayavadis. Why, Prabhu?
As I said, because they say that when the Brahman comes as Krishna, his body is also subject to Maya. Why? Because he is under mode of goodness. And when he is under mode of goodness, he also is subject to actions, reactions, like cursing of Gandhari, all that they say.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Mata.
Dandavats.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. That was pronounced. So it was a very nice class. Just had a small question, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhu, generally discussions about Mayavad is not complete without referring to Shankaracharya. So my question is, was Shankaracharya Mayavad or his followers are Mayavads? I mean, where does that differentiation happen, or it has happened or it didn't happen?
Okay, so the Padma Puran or Vishnu Puran, I'm not able to. We have that reference which Prabhupada quotes where Shiva is saying Mayavadam, Asat Shastram, Pricham, Baudam, that way. It is where Shiva is saying in Kali Yuga, Kalau Brahmana Murtina, I will come in the form of a Brahmana to preach this Mayavad, which is Asat Shastram. So he's saying, my mission that time is to preach Asat Shastram. That means something which is not true, Asat. And on the other hand, our Shadgo Swamis, when we pray to them, we say, no, Saddharma Samstapakau. So the eternal Dharma, Saddharma Samstapakau. So the mission was clear that Shankaracharya wanted to propagate this incorrect philosophy. And why? Why so? Because the plan of the Lord was, at the onset of Kali Yuga, the Brahmanas, in the name of sacrifices, started animal killing on a large scale. So then Buddha was sent, and Buddha's message was reject the Vedas completely. But then the Lord understood that if people reject Vedas completely, then how will they even attain me? So I need to get them back to the Vedas. And so then Shankara was sent to give this very alluring philosophy. You read the Vedas, so why should I read? I'm already happy. No, when you read, you'll actually become God. When you read and become liberated, you'll become one with Supreme, like that. So he came in that way to give, to bring them back to the path of Vedas. Then Ramanujacharya was sent, Madhvacharya was sent, where they say, yes, what Shankara is saying is correct. We are one in quality, but then they highlight the differences. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the Achinta Beda, where Madhvacharya's emphasis was more on only the differences, Pancha Beda, the difference between me and another living entity. He quotes, although both are living entities, still there are differences, like that. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reconciles and says, yes, there is simultaneous oneness. I am also Jivatma, you are also Jivatma, but we still are different in that way. So that is Achintana. So Shankaracharya, certainly his mission was to preach Mayavad. And towards the end, because Shankar or Lord Shiva is a great devotee of Lord, he could not stop from giving the actual message. So therefore he composed Bhaja Govindam, which are all purely devotional hymns. But when he composed those things, his followers were confused. All this while he was preaching something else. So although they sing, I've even heard some of them believe that Shankaracharya, when Shankara composed this, they felt that he has lost his senses now. He's composing something which is not, and they never took that part seriously. Did it
Thank you,
answer?
Prabhu. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Clarified a lot of things. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Prabhu, for wonderfully answering all the questions and clarifications required, asked by various devotees. Thank you so much. And we're very happy to have your association. Look forward to your continued association, Prabhu. So we'll just end the session now. Opportunity is always there. Thank you, Prabhu. So we'll just end with the Vaishnava Pranam. Panchakalpatarubhascha kripā sindhubhyaṁ
Patitanam Vaishnavabhyo
ki jai. Bhagavatam Janji Prabhupada ki jai. Nityam Gaur Sitaram Premanandi Hari. Tomorrow we'll be having a special class, so it will be starting at 8:30 from the temple. Please be present. Okay.
It's 8:15.
I'm sorry, it's 8:15. Okay, I will correct myself. It's 8:15 tomorrow.
No, I'm sorry, Prabhu. Just
No, it's perfectly fine. Thank you, Mataji. So I didn't notice the time maybe properly. I will. Thank you. I'll be
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.